Can we please settle down for the next presentation? And Idowu Olasupo will be doing that. He will be looking at modeling the effects of behavioral programmatic gaps on effectiveness of ITN for malaria control in Nigeria. And there will be question and answers afterwards. So if you are listening, listen with a rapt attention. And if you have questions, you can note it down so that when he's done, you can naturally present your questions or comment accordingly. Let's welcome Idowu Olasupo for his presentation. Please clap for him. It was meant to be a light tea break. I don't know if it is heavy, that's why we can't clap. Clap for him again.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So I'll be speaking shortly on modeling the effects of behavioral and programmatic gaps on the effectiveness of long-lasting insecticidal net for malaria control in Nigeria. And I will take you through this presentation slides outline, range from background down to the references. As a matter of background, we know that the last WHO report, 2025, again reports the global malaria burden, which Nigeria bears 24.3%, and then of the cases, while 30.3% of the global malaria deaths and 38.6% of that occur among the under 5 age. Long-lasting insecticidal net has been a major vector control intervention used in Nigeria, and it has been proven to be very, very efficient. However, there are challenges. The number one challenge is the issue of behavioral gap. The fact that even though we have had mass distribution of long-lasting insecticidal net, which has reached up to close to 70% of household, but usage remained far lower than ownership. Usage is not the same as ownership. Not only that, the NMEP has recommended that early line should be replaced after every 3 years. However, because some of these interventions, particularly early line, is donor-driven, so there had been irregular campaign intervals, and this is this happened outside this recommended schedule, and sometimes you have aging nets in the field. And so the research aim, what we are looking at in this research, is to assess the effect of early line ownership gap and delays in net replacements on early line effectiveness, for us to be able to generate evidence to optimize vector control policy for selected states in Nigeria. And so we are putting up these 3 questions. One, we want to check how effective was early line usage under of the observed utilization level and campaign schedules in reducing malaria incidence in the selected states that we are doing retrospectively from 2015 to 2025. We want to be able to measure the impact of early line for the years that has been deployed. Also, the second question has to do with how much of the potential benefits was lost due to the gap between early line ownership and actual usage. Again, that is to be done retrospectively as well. Now, looking forward, what will be the effect of scaling up early line under 3, 4, and 5 year replacement schedule? We chose this replacement schedule because we have seen that in the past years, the replacement interval has not been, we have not been able to meet 3 years across all states. So what happens within these brackets between 3, 4, 5 years? And then if you scale up early line, and then we're able to replace within this interval. So for our study area, now the PMI had actually conducted vector surveillance studies across different states in Nigeria, but we decided to, 6 of them, called the last one, but we decided to look at each of the ecological zones, pick a state from each of the ecological zones so that we can have a spread across all states where PMI had conducted entomological studies. And so we have chosen Akwa Ibom, Kebbi, Plateau, Ebonyi, and Oyo State from south down to the north, where these PMI studies have been conducted. And so we have the malaria, the time series plot of the monthly confirmed uncomplicated malaria cases in all the states that are chosen for this study as represented. Now for our model, we have come up with a model, a mechanistic model, and that is the diagram, the schematic diagram of the model transmission that shows transition between epidemiological compartments covering for both human and mosquito population. The compartments with underscore H are the human compartments that come from susceptible human down to pre-infectious humans to asymptomatic human to symptomatic humans, and then for mosquitoes as well. And then the interaction that takes place between human and mosquito also shown by dashed arrow. And then LA line, that's lambda T that move from SH to EH. We have factored in there the LA line protective effectiveness, seasonality, and temporally correlated fluctuations in seasonal drivers are incorporated into both human and mosquito forces of infections. Now, part of the method also is that we calibrated this model to the data that was earlier presented within the Bayesian framework, and we have used Hamiltonian sampling process that was done in our software. We also calibrated using multi-stream data because we wanted a situation where we can avoid parameter unidentifiability issues. So we brought in population projection data from the National Bureau of Statistics, then prevalence and entomological data, as I've mentioned, prevalence data from DHS, and then entomological data from PMI. We used that, and then we were able to carry out posterior predictive checks for us to validate the model. So model out of sample validation was also carried out. And then afterwards, we're able to carry out 2 scenario analysis, counterfactual scenario analysis, which is retrospective in nature, where we're trying to see if there was no LA line, we want to see that to help us to estimate malaria cases that was averted under the observed utilization and campaign schedules. That is, owing to the level of LA line that was used and the intervals of LA line replacement schedules that were carried out in those states, what was the gain in terms of malaria aversion? And then the second scenario we check here was to look at a case which is counterfactual also, a case of if we have had full ownership uptake, that is to help us to estimate malaria cases attributable to LA line ownership gap, because we want to see if everything that was owned had been used, what would have been the situation. And then prospectively, we considered if we have 50%, 30%, 50%, and 80% LA line coverages usage across 3 to 5 years replacement schedule, we want to see what will happen between 2026 and 2030. This is because the first one help us to check the impact, to measure the impact retrospectively, and then the other one helps us to see what happens going forward, because now the NMEP is looking at the NMSP 2026 to 2030, and want to be able to provide some evidence for decision making regarding this. Okay, so for our result, this is the model fit result. You see for all the 5 states from Akwa Ibom down to Plateau State, figure 6 there shows the temporal PPC, which shows the agreement in temporal trajectory. PPC there, the temporal agreement in trajectory between observed data points. The data points are the ones you have as point black, and then the model replicated trajectory is the one you have as the solid line, which is the blue. What message can we see from here? Now, okay, PPC is posterior predictive checks, so which is one of the checks that we perform in order to see how well our model behaves when calibrated with data. What can we see here? We can see that our model actually passes the fit test across all the 5 states. Why? Because the posterior median tracks both the magnitude and timing of malaria peaks and trough in every state. And we saw that all the observed data falls predominantly within its 95% predictive interval. All right. So another check for this model is what we call seasonal PPC, which shows agreement in seasonal patterns between observed and model replicated monthly uncomplicated malaria cases. What can we see again here? One model, but we have used it to represent 5 ecological realities. So the within year malaria rhythm is faithfully reproduced. As you can see, the model is able to reproduce the trough and the peaks across a typical calendar year. What the data says, the model also says. The model says the peak in a year, typical peak in a typical year, and in the trough also in a typical year, from Akwa Ibom down to Kebbi State. All right. Because we are going to be using this model for predictive purpose, we need to also carry out some validation, where we have used out of sample validation approach, and then this for across all the states from Akwa Ibom down to Plateau. We were able to fit the model just to between 2015 and 2023 data only. And then we used the model to forecast from 24 to 2025 of the available data, and we have, which it has never seen before. So we see that across all the 5 states, every old-out observation fell within the 95% predictive interval. So for us, it makes us confident that what this model did for the past 2 years, then we can do for the next 2026, 2030. So because we are able to produce the pattern that it has never seen before. All right. Now to the retrospective analysis that was carried out, the results that we got there. Now we have is here to check malaria cases averted and potential benefit lost. So for each of these states, we have 3 trajectories: red, blue, and green. Yes, the blue one represents the baseline, that is the trajectory under the observed situation. Then the red one, which represents the scenario where if there was no LA line, the trajectory would represent that. And then the green represents the situation where if all the everything was used, all that. And then one very important thing that we can see here is that because here we are going to see in the next table that for each of the states, campaign took place in different years. And so immediately after the campaign, we see that the gap between the blue and the red, which the gap measures the impact of LA line. So we see that the gap closes as time goes on. So that tells us that as LA line effectiveness wanes, the impact reduces in the population. And so once there's another rollout, which for instance in Akwa Ibom, we can use that as a vivid example. Another rollout took place in 2018. Immediately we saw that the gap widens again, and then as the LA line decays, it closes again. So what is the message here? The post-campaign, post-campaign cases in the observed scenario diverge sharply below the LA line, no LA line counterfactual. So that means as the net aged, the trajectory converged, a recurring predictable loss of protection as the LA line loses its effectiveness. So while the gray line is a price of the ownership usage gap, that is a preventable cases left that is still left. In table 2, for each of the states, we realize that shows the ownership and usage comparison. So we saw that in Akwa Ibom, for instance, ownership was 74.2, but usage was for the first for 2014, usage was 36.8, and then in 2018, ownership was 41.3, and usage was just 17.8. So that accounted for the gap that you saw. Which across each of the states, we now see that the message here is that if you look at it from Akwa Ibom down to Plateau State, across each of these states, about 35.6 to 60.5% of the cases could have been were averted, which is measuring the impact of early line across states for respectively. While additional cases of 31.2 up to 57.8 could have been averted if all own early line were used. And then this one is helping us to see in the what happens from 2026 to 2030 if we use LLN at 30%, 50%, and 80% for each of the states. For instance, again, I will use Akwa Ibom as an example. Each of the states, we realize that we are having 3 panels, A, B, C, 36-month replacement, 48-month replacement, and then 60-month replacement. With each of those one, we are checking if, for instance, for the 36-month replacement, if LLIN is used at 50, at 30, at 50, and then at 80%. And we see that, of course, 80% LLIN for each of those replacement time gives us the best. However, as the replacement interval, widens up to 5 years, we see that the gains that we are supposed to have is being lost. And so what we are seeing is that across all 5 states and all replacement interval, scaling from 30 to 80% reduce predicted monthly incidence far more than shortening. So another thing that is of importance here is this. We also see that the gap between if, for instance, LLIN ownership, we decide to just give LLIN and then people are not using it, and then we keep on giving it every 3 years, it's not as important as ensuring that people use it so much, and then even if we just are able to maintain 4 years of distribution. All right. So now, one of the metrics that was highlighted in the NMSP 2024, 2021-2025 was the target of Nigeria to reach around 250 API, which is annual prevalent parasite incidence. And we want to see, and then also the WHO has helped us to classify malaria intensity as when the annual malaria incidence is below 100, then such state is classified, such place is classified to be very low. And when it is between 100 and 250, it's classified to be low. When it's between 250 and 400, it's classified to be moderate. And when it is from 400 to above, it's classified to be high. And then we see that prospectively, if you are able to use LLIN across each of those replacement time with the proportion also being used, we realize that each of these states are going to be at different stratum across states. So what we see now is that for Akwa Ibom state, if you are able to use 80%, now don't forget this, using 80% is very constantly, is very ambitious, and then replacing after every 3 years also. So the model is saying that if you can achieve that, LLIN can contribute to bringing malaria in Akwa Ibom state, for instance, down to the stratification of but we see that as time goes on, for instance, in Kebbi, we are not able to achieve. We see that we are still just around that moderate to high, even when you use it so much. But the situation where you use LLIN at 30%, then you also replace after, because it's going to most of the states are still going to be remaining very at a high level. So again, well, the take-home message there is that 88% usage was 36% monthly replacement. Akwa Ibom, Oyo, and Plateau reached the very low stratum by 2030. But even the most optimistic scenario leaves Ebonyi and Kebbi above the moderate stratum. So in this state, LLINs are necessary, but they are not sufficient. So now, lastly, we're able to look under varying levels of LLIN usage and replacement campaigns. And just what we did is to look at, on average, between 2026 to 2030, on average, what is going to be the API, annual API on average? Again, we see that what I said earlier before, that moving from 30% to 8% usage, dwarfs the gain from cutting replacement from 60 to 36 months at every single usage level. So even that the best case scenario here we have in Akwa Ibom, which is 61.9 per 1,000 population, and then in Oyo State 90.0 in per 1,000 population, and Plateau 78.2 1 per 1,000 population. So that's if people actually sleep under their nets. All right. So what are the key findings here? The key findings is study shows here is that early line actually substantially reduced malaria burden, averting between 35.6 to 60.5 of monthly malaria cases across the 5 study states between 2015 and 2025, confirming their continued effectiveness despite suboptimal utilization and delayed replacement. Also, behavioral gaps, which is the ownership usage mismatch, remained a major source of preventable malaria burden. So achieving full utilization of own LLI could have averted additional 31.2 up to 57.8 of monthly cases, with the greatest gain observed in Kebbi and Plateau State. So, and we also saw that as LLI aged, their effectiveness declined and malaria incidence rebounded, emphasizing the need for timely replacement campaign. And we also saw that increasing LLI utilization produced greater reduction in malaria incidence than shortening replacement interval, indicating that behavioral change intervention to improve net use may yield larger epidemiological benefits than increasing campaign frequency alone. Also, the impact of LLI optimization varied across ecological settings, as we saw. 80% utilization with 36 months replacement could reduce transmission to very low level in Akwa Ibom, Oyo, and Plateau, while in Ebonyi and Kebbi, they remain at the moderate to high transmission setting, indicating that LLI alone are insufficient in this high burden states. So, finally, we say that there's need for us to close the ownership usage gap. So we need to strengthen post-distribution behavior change communication. We need to promote consistent use through community engagement and routine monitoring, and then address behavioral barriers to sustain utilization. Also, from what our model shows, that the 3-year NMEP standard should still be enforced, should be maintained. However, we understand that funding is involved here. So by whatever means, there should be a development of contingency funding to prevent donor-driven delays beyond 48 months. Because intervals above 48 months, which is 4 years, substantially widen the incidence gap. And then we need to tailor intervention to local transmission setting, as we saw that the behavior and programmatic gaps vary across states. And so there is need to prioritize high state burden for intensified implementation efforts, and complement LLI also with additional intervention. Of course, like as we mentioned before, that some of these are going on in different states, but then it has to be intensified. So again, WHO says we should adopt the integrated approach. So our model is also saying the same thing, that we should adopt integrated malaria control strategies to accelerate progress towards elimination. Yes, our study has some limitation. The fact that we have a simplified transmission dynamics that assume homogeneous mixing within each state and didn't capture sub-state heterogeneity in transmission. And then sometimes also heterogeneity in LLI, because the data we have access to is the data from the MIS. So we of course, when you have at 2015, 2021, 2010, 2015, 2021, things might change between those years, but whatever we have for those years was all we used to represent that year up to whenever we have data available. So again, so data limitation was an issue. And then on model factors, for instance, we didn't incorporate insecticide resistance, climate variability, and population movement. Of course, we used a seasonal function to represent the generality of everything that measures seasonality, but the variability across each state. And then so our results should be interpreted within the assumption of this model. So this study actually quantified the epidemiological impact of 2 gaps limiting LLI effectiveness: the behavioral gap between ownership and usage, and the programmatic gap arising from irregular replacement campaigns across 5 high-burden Nigerian states between 2015 to 2025, and predicted the potential impact of addressing these gaps between 2026 and 2030. So the findings provide quantitative evidence to support the prioritization of behavioral change communication and consistent replacement campaign scheduling as core components of Nigeria's malaria vector control strategy. So we want to acknowledge our partners, our funders, Bill and Melinda Gates, that has funded this project, and all our partners, the institution where I came from, ICAMDA, Federal University of Ekiti, and then Malaria Consortium, and then NMEP also for everything that was done, provision of data, and then access to stakeholders, involvement, and all of that. We appreciate. Thank you so much. And these are some of my references used for this work. So on that note, I want to say thank you for listening.
Was that applause enough for you? He said no. He said, please clap for him again. Thank you. Before we react to his presentation, in the course of presenting, some gentlemen walked into the hall, and I want to have the privilege to recognize Dr. Tolu Fagbemi from NMEP. A round of applause for him, please. Thank you. Temitokpe Adeyoju from Path. He's that man we're looking for. So he's here now. Please clap for him again. Also, Chinedu Okoye from MC stepped in, the man with the black cap. Please, a round of applause. I call him the mosquito man. This man protects mosquito. The man protects mosquito. Please, it's our own. A round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. So he's the one keeping custody of the mosquitoes. So I want to okay. Dr. Debbie, you're also welcome. I'm told you're from CMS, right? But we're also looking for you. Welcome. Thank you. Please, a round of applause for her. So, those online want to also thank you for your staying power with us online. And I want us to clap again for this gentleman. This particular presentation resonates with me very well. I'm not a mathematician. I am just a social scientist. So when he was talking my mind. He was talking to me. Clap for him again. So I want to ask if we have any question, comment, or reactions, both those online and those in the hall. So if you have, let's see you. Question, comment. Eh? Okay, this man has something. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for the very wonderful presentation. Like it's while presenting, I think it's the other one. Okay, no, I think it's this one. Okay, while presenting, I had a lot of questions going on in my mind, and as you were unfolding the slides, you were answering my questions. So thank you for that very wonderful presentation. My only concern, okay, maybe I should even start with, well, I can't talk like an authority where some people there are some people in this room that won't make me talk like an authority. But programmatically, it used to be ITN, then we moved to LLIN, but we are back to ITN. So we call it ITN now. So, but that's not my comment. I just said, let me put that out.
Thank you.
There. So my comment majorly is one of the things I wanted to ask about is, you already mentioned it in your limitation, which is we are already having resistance. Some of these mosquitoes are resistant already to some of the materials in the net. So like the pyrethroid and all those things. So that's why there are a lot of modifications going on, which is why vector entomology continues constantly to improve on these nets. That's why we don't even do one size fit all for net distribution to states again. So it is based on their entomological surveillance findings that you know which net fits which state or which area. In fact, I was in a meeting last week with Professor Mukulu and co, and we're still saying that even in a state, different LGAs can have different susceptibility findings to these vectors. So, but your model was about two major things: the rate of redistribution and behavior. Then your recommendation talked about rate of distribution. Of course, it's not your concern because it has a lot to do with funding, with government ownership, and all those things. But the second one is what I want to talk about, which is behavior. So you said we should find a way to improve on behavior. So how now? So my question is on how. So if we are talking about behavioral change, so how do we, or how can we, because when you're talking about behavior, like you mentioned, ITN ownership is not in any way the same as usage. Ownership, everybody can own it, but usage is what determines the effectiveness of that ITN. And usage has always been a major issue because usage is low anywhere. Check MIS, check NDHS, check any data. So the challenge, so behavior has been the challenge. So how can we improve on the behavior? Some will tell you, it gives me heat, it gives me rashes, it does this, it does that. So how can we actually, so I would have loved to see your recommendation talking about some of these how. Do you understand me? All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Next question, comment in the hall. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Dr. Ezinhebuka, an entomologist, and I think he had cleared why we are using ITN now. So the basics of that ITN is all that you've presented here. Okay, so that's long lasting. It's no longer lasting long. so I think that is the fulcrum of the whole thing. Yeah. So then I think the second question he had asked, or the last one, which is the behavioral aspect. You're a modeler. You're not a social behavior person, so you might not be able to answer that. But if there are modalities put in place for advocacy and social behavior communication that will enable people to be using their net despite the heat, the everything. I did a study then in Benue State on ITN usage and the problems, and 99% of them say that there is no light, so that they cannot use nets inside heat. And we were trying to say, okay, let us all use it together. I was using it, and all of us were sweating. And at the end of a quarter, we went to test the malaria positivity, which was negative. So that's part of what might be contributing to maybe the behavioral change aspect. Then coming to my own question, I think I was looking for insecticide-resistant data, and I was disappointed when you said you use it. I felt, oh. So it's actually something that could have complemented, one, the ITN distribution itself, because that 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years that you are talking about is actually the time the insecticide in the net winds off. So I think that's the basis of the replacement campaign that is sticked to 3 years. So never we stand that. I think we should let that go and judge the presentation on the ambit of the two. That's two major objectives. So I think the place you mentioned as LLI aged, effectiveness decline, malaria rebounds, emphasizing the need for timely replacement. Okay, so here I noted something that ITN does not only work with the insecticidal effect. It actually also works as a barrier breaker, right? So if we are putting that out, we should also have that caveat that in as much as the insecticide have waned, it still protects. All right, so I think that's the angle where I also noted. Then okay, so this model now, can it be used in states that have not had ITM for like 5, 10, 6, 7 years? I listed some of the states here. I have states that have 1-time distribution, 2-time distribution, 3-time distribution. So using Lagos State as an example, I think the last time was very far. Yes. Can this model work in Lagos State? Abuja, okay, currently I think Malaria Consortium is going to do something, but if you also look at the MIS 2025, you see that these states are actually performing better. Yes. So that actually comes to the point where you mention other interventions to ameliorate the malaria burden. So those states that have not had net and yet their prevalence is very low as 2%. How do we inculcate that into this modeling? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we take you. Mic is on in. Just put it, yes, put it on.
Yeah, thank you very much for that presentation. It's always a good thing to hear from the academia, where we want to assume that you don't have any interest, right? You know, and putting things out the way it is as part of a very robust national conversation. I want to ask, did you consider the type of nets that was, in these 5 states, was it PBO, was it dual AI? Because that also can serve as a confounder on, the findings, around what we have. Then the study stopped around 2021. That's the extent of the data set. MIS 2021 was used, right? For the nets in particular, yeah. So we have the 2025 result out now. I think we can actually, yes. And there was a drastic, movement, in what we found. Like, as a whole, 22% to 15.2 now. If you look at that movement, in the previous MIS, you find a 1% movement like that, but this is really huge. And within the time frame that this happened, if you look at the tools that we have within the elimination space, ITN, they are very huge. If you look at the case management, you look at in these 5 states now, only 2 states are doing SMC here. In fact, Oyo does in some LGAs, yes, not all. Then it's Kebbi that has, robust. So case management, SMC in some places, ITN, and maybe the, IPT, even IPTI, IPTP in the ANC and all of that. So campaigns, ITN campaigns, comes out to be a very major interventions despite the low utilization. So I would want to think taking this forward, because the other data you use stopped at 2023, right? Then you use model to, if I heard you right, 2025. So it would be good to, maybe as a follow-up, to subject that model to the current MIS because of that drastic change, yes. And let's see what patterns that will bring. And that will be an interesting piece in the whole conversation around ITN campaign. But around that, I think you've done a very good job. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, just to add to his point, if you check what he was talking about, there are drastic reductions in a lot of states. A whole lot of states that drastic.
In fact, Plateau State now is competing with Lagos. It has
Wow.
the low threshold banding.
So, in fact, currently, we don't have any states in the WHO
We have moderate and low.
All right, thank you. Do we have question in the hall again? Doctor, your microphone on the table is functioning. You need to punch the button on.
So regarding the model diagram, I didn't see the recovery compartment. It's missing. So please, can you explain so that we can appreciate the paradigm shift of the recovery compartment? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Should we take those online, or we need to listen to you and afterwards we'll come back to those online? Okay, so I'm going to take. Let's. Doctor, I'm giving you a maximum of 2 minutes. You know, academians, they talk a lot.
Because I'm a data scientist, so and I'm interested in your graphs. Not, I just want to know what inform your spread in your plots. There are some spreads, like an ensemble spread, in your plots. What informs them? That is just it. And
Prof, if I may get you correctly,
yes.
Are you saying the credible interval, or you are talking about the pattern of the data itself?
No, if I see your yes, because you before the thick lines that you have like a mean inside a spread.
Okay.
So what informed that? We call it ensemble spread.
We call it uncertainty bounds.
Okay, yes.
So
okay, that's just it.
So thank you. Those online, just hold on for us. I can see messages. And if you want to ask questions, just give us a few moments. So when he responds to those in the hall, we'll come back to you. So please, let's have you respond.
thank you so much. I really want to appreciate everyone who had made contribution, and indeed, these are enlightening contribution indeed. I would like to start from the rear. I think, Prof, I mentioned the fact that that's the uncertainty interval, because we have used a Bayesian approach of model fitting. So it helps us to generate what we call uncertainty interval, so which is 95% credible interval, which I think is preferable in when it comes to epidemiology. It wouldn't be nice to just give a point estimate when you are estimating things around disease burden, and then intervention impact and all of that. So it's good to bring it under because the data itself has uncertainty. The parameters value we use also they have uncertainty, a lot of uncertainty in the model development. So there's need to cater for such. So that's why we have that bounds. And then it's already incorporated into the method of calibration. So thank you so much, sir. And then, like I said, I'm taking it from the rear. For the recovery compartment, she said it's missing. Actually, this is mathematics. And in modeling, we need to understand when we put something, what does it mean? Now, because sometimes people put classes without interrogating what it means per disease. It does not mean every disease can be captured by an SR model, SAR model, because it depends on the biology of the disease itself. Malaria has not been known to confer immunity after recovery, because a person who recovers from malaria, if he's exposed to mosquito, infectious mosquito bite again, can get infected. So people recover. We are not saying people don't recover. People recover back to susceptible class. So, but we don't have a space of time where somebody becomes immune such that even when infectious mosquito bites you, you are not going to be infected. So that R class is serving dual purposes. It's serving the purpose of those who recover and then become protected for some time before the immunity wanes out. But that is malaria has not recovery from malaria has not been known to confer infection blocking immunity, and so that's why we are not factoring that, because malaria does not agree with such biology as far as we know. Maybe in this hall, if we have such information that malaria confers infection blocking immunity, then we can then put that recovered class. That's what it means actually mathematically when we use that. Yeah, epidemiologically, the biology and everything. So that's what it connotes. All right, thank you whenever it is used. Okay, yeah, thank you so much for the information on the new data that is available. Like you know, sir, it's a PhD work that started some years back, and the data available that time was what we were using. And I appreciate the fact that you just informed me now that some of these malaria cases are coming down to low. And indeed, if you look at what our model predicted from 2026 to 2030, you see that our model predicted that with higher usage, we are going to be bringing some states to low and moderate. If indeed those things happened in the past, which we didn't have access to, and then now finally we have a situation where the states are within the low and the moderate, then our model is just saying the right thing as well. So it will be good. Maybe after this work, we'll bring in those data, and then we'll really want to estimate the real impact. So as you have suggested, thank you so much, sir. And then regarding the type of nets used, yeah, I think as at the time we were carrying out this study, the information we have is the DAWA plus 2 was what was distributed, which is based on the net that was used. Yeah. So it's the net that the information about the net used from that we actually because we really don't have know until we got to extract that information from the MIS, and then all the parameters, the values are from that document, not okay. So then, yes, you also mentioned the fact that some states were performing better without LLIN, and how do we bring that into the model? Yes, even though we have singled out LLIN here to evaluate its effectiveness, one thing that we appreciate in that in the results is that as we saw that as LLIN, if you are taking LLIN for long, after some time we realize that the effects that LLIN could contribute. ITN. Okay, so let me now get used to ITN. Because you have once been told that ITN is one that is impregnated every 6 years, and we're told it should be low. Now we are coming back to ITN. So I'm also I will reprogram my mind with ITN. So we're just trying to look at those states where ITN has been deployed, and for whatever number of years, the intervals have been, and to check their impacts. Really, for those states too, where LLIN has been long deployed, maybe if it is still going on, and people are using it, maybe we'll have near elimination situation. But we are just saying that those states that are using LLIN, it's not as if LLIN is useless in those states. It's doing something. And what is it doing? We are trying to quantify. And that's what the work is all about. So for those states, we know that Lagos State, there are other interventions in place. There are other socioeconomic factors in place also. Access to treatment and ACT, everything is in Lagos. And so we cannot say altogether that everything has to do about ITN. So but we have only singled out evaluation around LLIN for those years that it's been used in those states. So we cannot say that is the only one doing the job, because there are some also in the model we factor baseline intervention that are in place in those states like ACT and other ones. They are baseline. We factor them in. So it cannot be LLIN doing the only job. So the ITN, oh my God, the ITN doing the main job. All right. Mm.
You are now discussing subnational tailoring, which is now at the center of the strategic plan 2026 to 2030.
Thank you, sir. So there was also here, it was mentioned that we should consider the fact that LA line has both, ITN has both insecticidal effects and then also, but yeah, we actually did that in the model because we catered for the killing effects of the ITN effect which is offered by the barrier. So that's why usually you see that though WHO says after 20 washes or 3 years of use, LA line went up, but because it also provides barrier, our model does not show that at the end of 3 years everything ends. We still have some protection until the LA line. The winning will now be in terms of the physical degradation of the net, when the net is no longer useful physically, not just when the net, the insecticidal net. In fact, some of the studies that have been carried out in Nigeria also shows that the 3 years, that's duration, talking about the duration of ITN, insecticide in ITN, that even at 3 years is optimal. So we saw that in states like Oyo State and for other states that some ITN duration was carried out. So we factored that into the model. All of those informations were carefully factored into the model as well. And then, yeah, I mentioned that the insecticide resistance issue was not considered. Okay, so I think, like we said, the work is still ongoing. We can look at that to really, because like you said, it can be a confounder here. You know, we'll be interested in seeing that going forward. And then lastly, the issue of behavioral change. I think I've been bailed out here. So I should just leverage on the higher authority. So thank you so much. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Can we see those online? There are chats. Can we see the chats? There are questions in the chat box. Before we come to those who want to speak, this one is coming. How can we get our own tea? We don't need the break. Oh, you see, the problem with technology, that's it. There was a cartoon that I saw that a particular man was relaxing under the tree with a bottle of beer. And he was saying that, well, he's not disputing the fact that technology has and innovation has transformed the world. But until technology is able to download beer for him, he will not see the impact of technology. So that's the problem with technology. You are here with us, but you can't take the tea. So sorry. But don't worry, we'll find a way to send you ET so you can actually be a part of it. Thank you. How can we encourage utilization of ITN to a large extent to reduce indoor bites? This is coming from Kenneth Maduka. Plateau is doing SMC. I think he's, okay, that's another one from Joseph Olasupo asked the question. Did you see that? How can we encourage utilization of ITN to a large extent to reduce indoor bites?
Yeah, we've talked about social behavioral communication. Actually, this has to do with campaigns from the programs, which, again, you need money for this. Because what people don't use, like we have talked about, the issue of people saying there is, when you sleep under it, they have discomfort and everything. I think something needs to be communicated to the people that what seems like the discomfort, the advantage of it is more than what the discomfort itself. And so maybe if money goes into this, we can engage our social media platforms, we can engage influencers, all over the place. Just like what was done for cholera one of those days. I mean, sometimes where you see this Baba Saka, doing something, say he went to urinate and defecate inside water body, and then somehow that was leading to cholera and everything. And then, that message was passed. I can still remember that message. Has been, on for many years. So we can do that kind of thing also for ITN. And then many other ways of changing people's perspective about ITN usage itself. And then, I think my prof wants to also say something.
I also see the need that you cannot completely eliminate the indoor bites. The reason you can reduce it.
Yeah.
If in the night I want to walk, I slept on that net. 2 a.m. I want to walk. I want to pick my phone. I want to press my laptop. I want to check something. I am applying for a grant. I'll leave the net, and while I leave the net, so those things you cannot really control. So I think those are some other. They say, but we can reduce.
We can reduce.
But to an extent. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I think this one is coming from Kenneth Maduka. Is actually of Malaria Consortium. The zonal. He's saying that Play 2 is doing MCMC. I think it's a clarification to what the man from Path. Okay, okay, all right. Thank you. We're sorry that we're just recognizing that now, Kenneth. Those online questions and comments, I'm going to give more room to maybe one or two because we have exhausted a lot of time on this session. And that tells you how interesting the session was. Please, a round of applause for him. That's why I like social sciences. It's very practical, so people can connect with it easily. So those online, do we have question? Well, I can see that we don't have any question. Please, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished professors and doctors in the house, kindly help me clap for this young man so he takes his bow. Thank you. Thank you. Well, one thing I want to I am of the opinion that until we begin to also intervene with the usage of social and behavior change communication to address malaria, we might still be having a lot of cases. We have had several interventions, but we have limited, if there are, limited intervention addressing behavior change as it affects malaria. So I think that one of the things that we should do in terms of behavior is that we should be pragmatic, proactively, deliberately, also begin to have specific intervention that is focusing on behavior change, because malaria itself is prevalent because of our behavior. Attitudinal change needs to be the hallmark of it all, because when you intervene, you distribute 20 million nets, 20 million people get it. Out of the 20 million, 17 million are using it for drying of food, fishery, vegetable, and all of that. Isn't it behavioral pattern that we don't slip under the nets? Because and all of those, so we need to, yes, we must be practical in that aspect as well. I think it's one thing that we should be looking at, all of us here. While we do other intervention, we should also be very deliberate about SBCC as interventions to address malaria. So this should be also an additional intervention as part of those things we want to do to address malaria in Nigeria. It's my opinion, and I think we can do that. So I wanted to say something.
Yes, just to, still around behavioral change. So part of the data that is expected to drive conversations is the death data, right? Mortality data for malaria. And this is one data that at the moment is grossly underreported. Not that there are no mortality cases, but probably there are stigmas around it and many other factors. Malaria mortality data is poorly reported because I would think that when a disease does not look like life-threatening, it also affects behavior, you know. So the statistics, the messaging around the mortality rate of malaria, if you come out now and say 2 million Nigerians died of malaria last year, what you hear generally is how did they know, you know, who has died. So I think that missing piece on recording mortality, you know, specific to malaria would go a long way in activating, because people, once life is threatened, it's behavioral response. So I think that's one key messaging. Then we see some of the adverts on TV. I think we also do a lot of wrong. Somebody feels weak, you know. I think last week we were in a meeting with the national coordinator, and you know, she put it out there. Somebody feels weak and he just goes to take the drug, and exactly. And the testing piece in it, test before treatment, is totally missing in that messaging that is widely televised. So these are some of the points that we can also start thinking on how we improve on SBC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for yourselves. Are you happy with the session? Is everyone happy? If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, and you really want to show it, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, stand up. If you're happy and you know it, stand up. If you're happy and you know it, and you really want to show it, if you're happy and you know it. If you're happy and you know it, take a step. If you're take a step. If you're happy and you know it, and you really want to show it, if you're happy and you know it, take a step back to your seat. A round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So it's my pleasure to invite the next presenter, who will be looking at modeling evidence session. This is called, of course, climate change, bed nets, use, and case management implication in Nigeria. And we'll be dovetailing into